Men and women are different, but today we're going to talk about how the differences impact every relationship in your life. I'm Dr. Christy Wise, and this is Life Sauce.
Yep. So
Okay.
where were we just at?
We were talking about how your generation and my generation have been socialized differently in terms of the sexes, you know, and the politically correctness and all the stuff. You know, I think that my generation, well, it was in the 70s and 80s, there was some traditional, I don't know, aspects to it. But also, it was after the sexual revolution and, you know, the women's liberation movement and all that stuff. So, but yet, when the rubber met the road, like I said, you know, at least for me, I enjoyed being the mom or the woman of the house and stuff like that, as well as having a successful career.
Well, I think that's still popular now too, because there's a lot of like traditionally feminine things that, you know, I see with my relationship and all my friends' relationships where like the girls will still want to like let me buy the things that get decorated in the house and whatnot. And the guys are typically kind of just like, okay, you know, like whatever is cool for you. And but if it was the other way around, it'd be like, what are you doing? Do not buy a doormat without me. You know?
Oh yeah, boy! I you remember I had a fight about that.
Yeah.
I was so pissed that he bought a doormat.
I was so
without me.
confused.
You were confused? Why?
Because it's a doormat.
I know, but I was like, this is my, you know.
I know, but to me, like you just wipe your shoes on.
I know, I was so pissed. I
was thinking of it practically, like, does it work?
I know what goes with my vibe. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's so funny. You were talking about some of your friends and how your generation kind of grew up, you know, with social learning.
Well, it's kind of weird because I feel like this is such a new thing where gender has become so important. Because I feel like when I was little, maybe I just didn't notice it as much. But like, you know, when teachers would ask like, what do you want to do? You know, there was a lot of traditional answers. Boys would be like firefighter, astronaut, policeman. And then, you know, the girls would say whatever jobs they wanted to do. I think there was some, there was like an artist or doctor, but like
teacher,
like all the answers were like, okay, there was no one that was like, I want to grow up and be a mommy, you know? Like that was on nobody's minds. It was like everyone going into the workforce.
Yeah.
But especially because I'm going into a female-dominated field in psychology. I feel like my perspective is also a little skewed compared to the rest of my generation.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like when I'm in when I was in my psych classes and whatnot, you know, often I'd be one of a handful of guys. And when I was interviewing at grad school, I was literally one of 3 guys in a room full of like, I think it was like 80 or 90 applicants.
Sure. That's how my program was
So it's like
too.
even the roles that I'm like experiencing right now are also kind of flipped.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's also trendy things that we were kind of talking about. Like, you know, in the 80s, at least in LA, it was super trendy to be bisexual. Really. And to this day, I could be. I mean, like, there's no problem for me. You know what I mean? And part of that was social learning.
I think that is what's going on today too, but like super magnified.
Yeah.
Where it's not just about sexuality, but I think more identity. And I think there's a lot of social brownie points attached to like how many boxes you check, you know? Especially when I was at community college, there were certain classes that I would take where you could tell when some people would talk that it's like when someone makes something their entire personality, you know? Like there's the, like all the gay friends that I've had, there was the ones that were like, this is just Bob or whatever. He is gay. Right. And then there's, I don't know, what's another guy's name? Tim.
Yeah.
There's Tim. Everything about Tim is gay,
right?
You know? And I feel like making it your identity has become much more, not idolized, but like people put a lot more weight on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Where they make their gender, their sexuality, them instead of it just a part of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Like it defines them a little bit more.
Yeah, like when I forgot if it was at work or if it was at school, but I go to like pronoun training, you know?
Yeah.
And I get it, but it's also like if you are what you look like, I don't think it's necessary,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like if it walks like a duck, it sounds like a duck, it's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
a duck.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's almost a little bit of righteousness that comes with, hi, my name is blank, my
Yeah.
pronouns are blank,
Yeah.
blank, blank.
Yeah.
Or when people like put it in their bios on social media.
Yeah.
I get it. If that's your, if that's your personality, where it's like, if it's something that's really important to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like people are more interesting than their gender or sexuality.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
beautiful. Yeah. And also, I think that people are wanting so badly to get it right and not fuck it up that we kind of walk on eggshells, which I think also does it a disservice.
Definitely. That was a big thing because, again, I was one of 3 guys in my human sexuality class. And, and we would get to a certain part where it was like, I think we were talking about the female reproductive system, and we're all in the same class. We're all at the same level,
You're
learning
right.
the same things. Like, we're getting tested on the same stuff. We're all expected to perform at the same level. But the teacher would every once in a while force one of the guys, because, they just wanted one of our opinions.
Yeah.
If we're talking something about, like, periods and whatnot, like, she'd be like, let's get a guy's opinion. And the 3 of us would, like, look at each other.
Panicked,
and
right?
we'd be like, we're not allowed to say anything. Like,
Right.
even though we have the textbook right here, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter because it's like, what does he know? He's a guy.
Yeah. That's important. Because in terms of social learning and stuff like that, do you think that fear was because you were raised the way you were in the society?
Well, I
Like
don't know
getting
about
in
raised,
trouble. Yeah.
because I think you've done a pretty good job
Thanks.
of looking past gender.
Yeah.
But in terms of the way society has raised me, definitely. There's kind of an aura about femininity
Yeah.
and knowledge of femininity that, like, is not to be trifled with. Like, if you're a guy, you sit down, you shut up, you don't know anything.
Right.
I think I can't imagine what it's like to be a male gynecologist,
Yeah,
you go to med school and you are an expert.
Yeah,
but
a vagina's a pussy
yes.
expert,
Yes,
a pussyologist.
a pussy professional.
Yeah.
But I feel like even their opinions would get discounted way more than a female urologist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yes.
Like if a woman OBGYN was like, here's 5 things you may not know about the female reproductive system. People would just accept that as it is, regardless of where they fall on the how I feel about gender spectrum.
Right.
But if a guy gynecologist said the same thing on social media, I would be willing to bet a good amount of money that there would be a lot of comments being like, what do you know? This is
Yes.
mansplaining. You don't know anything. I've spent this many years with my body. You
Right.
know, like, it makes me an expert. And if you
Right.
go the other way with urology, I doubt the same thing's going to happen.
That is very interesting. So you're talking about like gender norms and expectations, really, right? And it's confusing for people when they start to, intertwine. We were talking earlier about the struggle, I believe, for women to know and believe and feel that they can be both really feminine and beautiful and really brilliant and strong. And, sometimes they're difficult for people to swallow.
I think so too. There's a lot more pressure on how women look than men look.
Yes.
I think guys have a bunch of different avenues to become successful or attractive. You could be like conventionally attractive. You can be wealthy. You can be funny. There's a bunch of different things. But like, if you look at the different, not to always go back to social media, but like, what's the first thing women do when they comment on like their friends' posts? It's like, beautiful,
Yeah.
you look amazing,
Yeah.
like, how do I get that? And I think you're right about it being hard to put people in more than one category.
Yeah.
Like, yes, this person is beautiful, but maybe they're also smart, maybe they're also funny, maybe they're also athletic.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if that is human nature being lazy. Like, it's much easier to think of someone, just put them in one box.
Yeah.
That's fine. Now they're
Yeah.
filed.
Yep.
Instead of like, oh, there's a bunch of aspects to this person.
Yeah.
You know, now I got to actually think about all the different parts of them.
Totally. You know, that makes me think, when I was going through all the like court shit, all that bullshit, and the attorney told me that I should wear my hair back and not wear makeup because I would be perceived a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy that I wouldn't just go and be myself, and you know what I mean? I wouldn't be misunderstood.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I have told both my friends and my girlfriend, like, if they're going out, or back when my friend was dating on Tinder, I was like, hey, don't do your makeup up so much. Like, look a little less nice than maybe you would, because then you're going to find someone who is looking past that.
Yeah.
Especially, I think this becomes a big problem for, like, you know, there's a bell curve of traditional attractiveness for the women on like the really far right side, because the vast majority of men won't even approach them.
Yes.
So those who do approach them,
Yeah.
even if there is stuff past beauty, which there almost always is,
Yeah.
unless you're a mail order bride,
Yeah.
they're never going to get to that.
Right.
You know, because the kind of guy that would approach that girl is usually not quite narcissistic in the colloquial sense.
Right.
Full of themselves, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes the other way too. You know, given like in our social learning, women are expected to be sensitive and nurturing and empathetic and, you know, accommodating and all, when there is a very strong woman who, you know, doesn't give a shit about her hair, you know, just not her priority or whatever, or a strong, you know, we perceive her as a bitch. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But a strong man, we were talking about that earlier, a strong man is more respected.
Certain traits are, even though it's the same trait, are considered positive in one gender and negative in another. Like
Yeah.
an aggressive man is like, oh, he's driven, he's going to get what he wants.
Yeah.
But an aggressive woman is like, whoa, who cut her off on the way to work?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we obviously have research on physical attractiveness and like getting a job and career, right? And it's much more likely that a good-looking person gets the job, which is just disgusting, but it's the truth, right? So how would you think that gender and our sexes impact our careers?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I think the first thing that I would talk about is whatever like field it is, because it depends on what's being done. You know, if you look at an oil rig, I would be, you know, pretty impressed if you found more than one woman, you know, or if you're talking about something else that's physical, like construction.
Yeah.
I bet that's 99.99% men or whatever. You know, so if you're the foreman or whatever and you're hiring and you see a woman's application, I bet that's going to get tossed away pretty quickly, even if it's way more qualified.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, that's right, because there are biases for sure. You know what I mean? I think that men tend to, yes, choose more masculine careers, not all the time. By the way, all of this is not, you know, I mean, like it can change, but this is the way, like, broad sweeping thought is, you know what I mean? But I think that men take those masculine roles and women often take those more feminine roles. But I think that women have been fighting for, obviously, and pushing for equality in pay. I mean, that just pisses me off. I can't even go there. But, you know, equality, but we still have that bias that if a woman gets that position, she must have slept her way to the top, especially if it's a good-looking woman.
Yeah. That pay thing was another thing I was going to talk about. I think that is also a really common misconception. A lot of like data and research into it has come out. And once you start taking out like the very, very top earners, like the billionaires and whatnot, because there's, I don't know what the ratio is between men and women billionaires. I think there might be like two, you know, one of them being Bezos' ex-wife, became the richest woman from that divorce. But I I'm pretty sure. I mean, again, this is all just like stuff that comes out on the internet, so how much of it's actually true.
Yeah.
But once you take away like the very top earners, the pay becomes much more equalized. I think the thing that gets tossed around is a lot is like 77 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
You know, I don't see that making practical sense, because like if women were just getting paid less than men, or being systematically hired just based on gender, I don't think a lot of big companies would employ women, because they'd have to worry about, you know, maternity leave. Like,
Yeah.
we have to pay this person not even working. You don't have to worry about that with guys,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so there's some realistic thought
Yeah.
behind that.
And I think there are certain jobs that do get paid more because of the dangerous nature of them.
Uh-huh.
You know, we talked earlier about like offshore mining and whatnot, like
Yeah.
deep sea, like welders and whatnot make like a ton of money, but I think the death rate in them is like over 8%, which is
Wow.
like massive
Yeah,
for
yeah.
jobs where it's like a few in 1,000, which is still massive for jobs.
Yeah.
You know, if you give someone a bowl of M&Ms with 1,000 in them and you tell them 3 of them will kill you,
Yeah.
most people aren't going to reach their hand in that bowl.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think men are willing to take more risk too, because of that aggression that we talked about.
Yeah.
It's actually making a lot more sense, because I think if you even look at like trading patterns, if you took a bunch of day traders, you know, men and women, I'm just going to assume 50%,
Yeah.
because it doesn't seem like there should be any differences in that job. I would bet you the men would tend to trade more aggressively.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
have a higher risk, but higher potential for reward.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when we get to the part where we're talking about our brains, and yes, men tend to be, you know, more aggressive and stuff like that. But what's interesting is that the way that our brains are structured does actually make that happen. It's real. You know what I mean? And because emotional regulation is different with men than it is with women, so they respond to that physiology of, you know, that bubbling up more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And I feel like aggression also gets selected for in a lot of jobs. You know, if there's a startup company and you see you have 2 applicants who are basically the same on paper, and when they interviewed, one person was really talking about like pushing the envelope, like
Yeah.
let's get this done, and the other person was just like, yeah, you know, when people give me orders or give me jobs, I get them done, and doesn't matter how quick they are, I just do what I'm told.
Yeah.
I feel like the aggressive applicant is often going to get selected.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a startup or
Yeah.
law enforcement, military, like
Yeah.
it gets selected for a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. You know, I was just thinking about in terms of, you know, expectations and social norms. I was thinking about college and I was thinking about the difference between if a college student girl sleeps with her professor, how people view that professor. Like, oh, he's slimy, he's sleeping with students. But if a male student sleeps with a female, you know, professor, is it still viewed the same way? Do you think?
Oh, definitely not. There's articles that come out all the time. I don't know what's going on in Texas right now, but I keep seeing headlines about female teachers sleeping with underage students. That's statutory rape. They didn't
Yes.
sleep with their students.
Yeah.
You know, if it was the other way around, where it was like a 40-year-old male teacher
Yeah.
and a 16-year-old girl,
Uh-huh.
everyone would be waiting for him to get hanged in the public square, and then
Right.
they drag his body around, you know, behind the carriage. So, yeah, that is viewed very differently. They
Yeah.
did a whole Adam Sandler movie about that,
Yeah.
where he was hooking up with, I think it was like a high school teacher, and became, or middle school even.
Oh.
And I think it's called like That's My Boy. It's a good
Yeah.
watch. But you could not make that movie if it was the other way around. If
Oh,
it was
no.
a old male teacher, even if, you know, he was conventionally attractive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's so bizarre. So, and it's not like this in all societies. I know that, but you know, in the United States, it tends to, you know, be the direction that we go, which is odd because it hasn't changed so much. I mean, a little bit. We're certainly fighting for it, but it hasn't changed that much. I want to move on and talk about emotional expression, like, you know, how society sees us, but the differences between the sexes. So I would say that society really is uncomfortable with overly emotional men. And there's like it's a sign of weakness. And I don't think that, but that's, you know, what society kind of thinks. But what they are allowed to show or express is anger. That's like an acceptable emotion, you know. And for women, you know, it's like the opposite. We're encouraged to express and seek support and lean on people. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've experienced it because I feel like I'm in a weird spot because I was raised to like, it's okay to let your emotions out and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think I'm also naturally like, not aggressively empathetic, but I'm going to
Yes.
feel what you're feeling regardless of
Yeah.
either one of us wanting it.
I'm sorry about that.
And it does put me in a weird spot because I bounce back and forth between this traditionally masculine role of being a protector and whatnot,
Yeah.
but also being like, I will cry.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Like if I'm watching Turner and Hooch,
Oh,
the waterworks are gonna flow.
Oh,
you
God,
know?
why did he have
Like,
to die? Yeah.
I'm getting that, you know, just thinking about it.
I know,
think
me
we were
too.
watching a video the other day and it was like you, Noah, and I, and someone was crying in the video and I was like, I have to stop watching this. I'm going to start crying.
Yeah.
You know, even though I am kind of in that role in our house where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, something's going wrong. Go talk to Jacob.
Yeah.
Or like, there's a noise outside. Send
Jacob for
you
sure.
know?
Jacob.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. And the other, I'm going to talk about what that does later in life, to, like my couples, the clients I see, because he's been socialized all that time, and she's been socialized all that time. Now they're together, and she is furious that he cannot express himself well or say how he's feeling or get emotional. And so there's this conflict that goes on. Like, why doesn't he understand basic emotions? What the fuck is wrong with him? And this is where we use it to our advantage, because if you understand the way that we are socialized and the way that we are brought up, then there should be some latitude in that. And there even, I'm sorry, even worse, when he finally gets to the place where he is crying and he's expressing, and he's oftentimes a woman will emasculate him for being a pussy. You know what I mean? So it's a mixed message.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like funny little skits on the internet where it's like that, where it's like a guy and a girl are, you know, having lunch or something, and she's like, why don't you never show emotions? Why don't you never show emotions? She's like, no, it's fine. And it's like, it's okay. Like, your dog just got hit by a car. Your dad died. You lost your job. He's like, no, I'm fine. And then eventually he like explodes like, I'm having a really hard time. He's crying. She goes, ooh, that's ugly.
Yeah.
You know?
That's exactly.
But again, speaking from personal experience, it is a weird thing where I don't know if it's like subconscious socialization or if there is an actual biological mechanism for it, but I have to actively fight the urge to not express my emotions, which is weird because it's productive and it's like desired. It's like, oh, it is the objectively right thing to do.
Yeah.
Keeping them inside is never a good thing.
Right.
I mean, in the long term, never a
Yeah.
good thing. Compartmentalization is totally fine.
Yeah.
But like, there is some part of my boy brain that says they don't need to know.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell. If you do tell, you know, like, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So I think that it's probably something a lot of guys also deal with, regardless of the social climate.
Wow. You know, that's so true. And I'm thinking of the other side, like, you guys are struggling with where to have a boundary in your self-expression and stuff like that. And women also have to do that with emotion and expression. I'm thinking about how society is, or how with doctors, a woman going into her doctor often because she's concerned about stuff, and emotional is often viewed as neurotic. And that is a fact that, you know, doctors listen often more to men than they do to women. And so women have to then figure out how to advocate for themselves. You know what I mean? To not let that notion suppress us because something is wrong. It's why we live longer, because we check it out. You know what I mean?
And I think that even ties into kind of what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, because there are certain aspects of women as a whole that, don't touch them. Society says don't talk about them, it's whatever. Where, if a woman goes into an ER for abdominal pain, it's like, oh, people can be like, oh, it's cramps, or oh, she's just, suck it up a little bit, But if a guy goes in, like, they're like, oh my God, what if it's appendicitis or something,
right?
And I forgot what the numbers were, but I remember seeing something online a while ago where it was like women tend to get prescribed like pain medication a lot less than men for even, like these same injuries.
Wow.
Where I think it's that same thing where they just don't get listened to as much.
Or taken seriously.
Yeah. It also, I mean, now that we're just playing with these thoughts, as someone who, is like, that'll heal on its own, like it's fine. It's like, oh, it's fine. I was convinced my elbow wasn't broken. I told myself I could move my fingers. My elbow wasn't broken. That might also play into it, like sort of people don't listen to women as much because of X, Y, and Z, but also they might listen to men more because of that. If a guy does come into an ER, it's like, he came here by himself. No one told him to. Something must be wrong.
Right.
There's that old thing where it's like the farmer going into the hospital. And it's like, why'd you come? He's like, oh, my wife made me. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But he goes, oh, I thought something was wrong. It's like, get him in the OR right now. He's probably about to die. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I mean, we're talking about those differences, but what about on the other side of it, that where it is kind of also our superpower, as a woman, hating to pump gas, there's a damsel in distress kind of vibe about it. When I walk over, when I'm at the gas station and I say, excuse me, sir, I hate pumping my gas. Would you mind helping me? Oh, sure. And he rescues and he comes in and let me help you here. No, you get back in your car and sit down. There is some luxury about that.
Well, yeah. And it's like, I think it's okay to lean into those differences because that's going to make both parties feel good.
Yes.
When I first started dating my girlfriend, she never understood why I opened the car door for her.
Yeah.
And I was like, it makes me feel good. And then, a couple months down the line, if I don't do it, she's like, why is the car door still closed? It's like, it makes me feel good. It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to embrace some of these traditional roles. They probably started for a reason.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they were all just designed for control or oppression or whatever.
Right,
Some of them probably are based in, hey, this makes both of us happier and feel good.
Yeah, this makes both of us feel good. Yeah. And there's a beauty to that. Again, just like I said before about being a good-looking person and smart at the same time, to embrace your, like the feminine side or your masculine side and enjoy it and reap the benefits of it, doesn't mean that you can't do the other side. You know what I mean? Like you can be both.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to use one to complement another. Like if there's like some big marketing event or socializing event, like if you are a pretty woman and you need to like get different companies' attentions, play into that and then give them the good information. But also be aware that, especially if you're, one woman in a room full of 100 guys, there's a large percentage of them that are not going to look past the physical side of things,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, fuck them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I think that every time, if I were to get a flat tire, you know what I mean? Of course I'm going to use that, or get pulled over by a cop. I can burst out in tears, but you would feel weird about doing that.
Oh, I'd probably get shot.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I don't want to think about that. But let's talk about body image for a minute, because it kind of leads us into, if we're going to use it as our superpower and yet embrace the other part of us, my masculine and my feminine and stuff, there's still going to be an expectation from our society about how we look. And men tend to want to look and feel masculine, muscular, fit, you know what I mean? Like take up space. Women, on the other hand, like when they feel smaller. Most women like when they feel more petite and, you know, a little bit more feminine in appearance, right?
I think we should put a pin in this real quick.
Okay.
Take a break, and then we'll get into the differences in body image and when we get back.
Okay. Okay, now that we're back from our break, right?
Yep, we were going to talk about body image.
Body image. Yeah, so there's lots to talk about with this. I know that we mentioned, you know, that men feel better, or most men are seen as feeling better when they're fit, when they're wide, when they take up space, and women like to feel more petite and more feminine, right? But it's not an easy thing to achieve. I mean, the bar is so high.
Yeah, especially because the examples that do get used, you know, in Hollywood or on TV shows or even your news channel, you know, they don't really use average-looking people.
No, look at my screensaver is The Rock.
Yeah. I also think that even though there are like ideal body types for each, for men and women, there's a lot more pressure on women to fulfill that ideal body type.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole look. I mean, like, for sure. You know what I mean? And which brings me to what seems to come up a lot with my clients is as we age, it changes. And not only does self-esteem and self-worth change in terms of your body image, and that's directly related to because we no longer can meet that expectation of what we think society wants, or even we think we want. You know what I mean? But men are seen as beautiful agers. Like, oh, he aged so beautifully. Even if you look at social media, right? You see one of the actresses, I say it all the time, oh my God, I didn't realize she was that old, you know? And with him, I'm like, oh, he looks nice with a gray beard. And I don't even do it consciously.
Yeah, something as simple as gray hair, everyone gets it if you still have hair at that age. You know, even a bald guy can be okay.
Totally.
You know, but if you see a bald woman, it's usually either G.I. Jane or going through chemo.
Yeah. Isn't that so interesting? Because it does put so much pressure on. Do you think that there is a discrepancy then in the way we manage ourselves in the world? If you feel beautiful and then all of a sudden you don't, or you know what I mean? Do you think that it changes who we are out there in the world?
Well, I think it's hard because a lot of the like traditional beauty standards are set, I think, are pretty biologically rooted, you know, symmetrical features, clear skin, muscle tone, like those are all signs of healthy people. And a lot of those are just not really things that you can hide with age, you know? So I think it's important to kind of like how lots of sports have like weight classes, you know, wrestlers that are 150 pounds aren't going to wrestle the people that weigh over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
It's like, keep yourself in your class. Don't compare yourself to where you were at 20 years ago because you have no option but to age continuously, you know? So having good standards that are reachable but also keep you in a spot where you're confident as you age, I think are very important.
Yeah. I was just thinking, first of all, some of those wrestling people, the women, and I always cringe when, you know, when one of the women, they're so masculine looking, you know what I mean? But I wonder if that mixed with what our perceptions are of how we should be or shouldn't be, you know, have us close in a little bit. Like I was thinking about, you know, dating and how, and we'll talk about this later in more detail, but how different we are in our level of confidence dating at a young age compared to dating at an older age because of all those changes. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a perspective change too. I feel like younger people have a thing they feel like they want to look like.
Yeah.
They want to look like idols or something. And then as people get older, I feel like it might change more to how they feel they should look like. I should look like, you know, I'm healthy, or I should look like I don't have, you know, wrinkles, or my gray hairs, or love handles, or whatever people's sticking points are.
Well, I'm going to tell you what really will fuck with your brain is a gray pubic hair. I literally called my girlfriends and asked, what the fuck do you do with a gray pubic hair? Because it does fuck with your brain. you know, and nobody tells you when you go get laser, it kills all the normal hairs, but leaves the gray ones. So then you have these danglers,
notice some more.
stragglers. Yeah, it's so awful. It's so awful. And I hear myself in my mind go, oh my God, this sucks. You know what I mean? It's a painful process.
It's so funny that you feel the way about it because, I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm a guy or because I already have some gray hair.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like that would bother me at all.
No, because you are a man. And it's not, you're not having to hold it together and have a pretty pussy. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's just the truth, you know? So I think it does change so much about even how we, like I said, how we are in the world, but even how we are with sex and intimacy.
I think it's also because like you don't get to choose when you start graying or anything like that. There are certain parts of beauty in society that are not up to the person. Like you can change your weight, you can change how well you take care of your skin and all that good stuff, hair color. But there's certain things like when you start graying, how tall you are, how symmetrical your face is. Like there's a lot of things that you don't get to change that I feel like a lot of people, especially on social media, are getting hung up on. You know, I keep hearing about how, you know, suicide and self-harm rates for teenage girls are going up since smartphones and Facebook and everything came out.
No question.
And I feel like they're probably the demographic that gets hit the hardest because they're just starting to hit that time where it's like looks become really important.
Totally. And look at, I mean, the fact that we have like things like Facetune and stuff like that, that messes with them even more because you look at someone, you know, it used to be when I was that young, I'd look through a Vogue and be like, oh my God, I want my legs to be that long. Do you know? But now people really are altering those things, you know, for an image.
Well, and I forgot if it was like Snapchat or some other social media company where they were applying like light filters, even if they were saying like this is our filter free version, like there's nothing going on. So then they see themselves when they take a selfie, assume that's the default, and then when you're actually alone and you're looking in the mirror and there's just that discrepancy, that it would be devastating.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I mean, so there's so much of it that kind of fucks with your head, you know. Let's talk about now behavior. The differences in men and women in terms of behavior. And this might piss a lot of people off because, you know, we can say that it's not always accurate for sure, but for the most part, this is what research shows.
People, while everyone is unique and individual, people as a whole do tend to follow general trend lines. Yeah,
so in terms of behavior, I want to start with that men actually function from a place of scarcity. Because they are providers and they have to save money and they have to make sure everyone's safe. And so there's a scarcity thing. And for women, it's abundance because it makes them feel safe. You know what I mean? I have plenty of food. I have plenty of the things I need because I'm being taken care of. And that also then changes how we deal with each other in relationship. Because if you're coming from scarcity and I'm coming from abundance, you can see where we would argue about money. Right? Or about anything, the size of the house or what city we live in or, you know, what we dress our kids in.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because I tend to be very conservative with my money. And I happen to be in a relationship with a spender.
Yeah.
And I feel much more content when I see that there's the potential of money.
Yeah.
Like, you know, everyone has I'm sure, like some number that they feel safe with in their bank account. Like they see that like, okay, like, you know, I feel like the weight on my shoulders is off a little bit. Like if I needed to get something, I don't have to worry about like, oh, what's this going to do to me?
Yeah.
And I don't know where I was going with that.
Just the scarcity and the abundance.
Right. So I'm thinking about like the potential of that money. Whereas the other half of my relationship is like, what can we do with this money? Like, let's get this, like, oh, we deserve to treat ourselves going out and whatnot. And so I think the actual action of having something versus what can I do with this is a big difference too.
Oh, for sure. Well, I know that with myself and even my clients, that when you're with a partner that is not spoiling you, you know, like it knows how bad you want those shoes or that bracelet or whatever it is, and doesn't buy it for you when you can afford it, or, you know, it feels yucky. Like it feels, you know, like I get pissed, like you're not spoiling me.
Yeah.
And I want to feel like the queen, and I want to feel like all the things, you know what I mean? Because we do function from abundance. Not hoarding all the time, you know.
Do you think that's more socialized or biological in nature?
Biological, I do. I think, and there's nature versus nurture and all those conversations, but I do think that we naturally, you know, women naturally want to feel safe, men naturally feel like they want to provide. And it's not, I mean, not across the board, I know that, but when a man is providing, he feels good about himself. When he has a shitty job or doesn't have a job and he can't provide, he feels terrible. And same with her. If she feels like she can't go and have her hair colored or her nails done or whatever it is, she feels terrible.
I feel like that also kind of ties into like the different roles that take in parenting.
Oh, yeah.
Where men are also kind of filling in with that provider role, where it's like, I brought home literally the bread, or bring home the bacon, you know, whatever their job is. Like, okay, I'm giving my family the resources, where in a traditional household, the woman would be like, now I'm using these to, you know, take care of the kids or maintain the house or this or that.
Yeah, literally. I mean, you know, if you think about even a holiday here in our home, yes, there's always candy, but I want an abundance of celebration. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it shows up all over the place, right? And with raising kids, exactly. If, you know, we have four of you guys, and I would be heartbroken if each of you didn't get the same type of abundance, you know?
Which is funny because we all are, obviously we have some similarities, being my brothers and my sister, but I feel like all of us tend to back off of the high levels of abundance and celebration. Yeah. I don't know if that's just a pushback against your parent. Like,
yes,
I'm going to be different than they are.
Yeah. However, Jacob, I want you to know, when you have your own kids, you're going to turn into me. You are. You just are. You're going to find yourself doing, it's your birthday, and let's do balloons in the whole house. You know what I mean? You will. I promise. It's just like it is the cycle of how it goes, you know?
What do you think about, we've been talking a lot about traditional roles in parenting.
Yeah.
What about like a flipped household with like a stay-at-home dad and the woman is the breadwinner? Or even in gay relationships where it's like, what's happening? Are we both taking on a masculine role? Or are we both taking on a feminine role?
Right. Well, I think even in that, there are more masculine and feminine. We have that in all of us. We all have a masculine and a feminine side. So some may balance it and some may just be okay without that. Do you know what I mean? But we tend to try to find that balance. I was thinking about when your dad took your braces off with the pliers.
Yes.
Because he could do it and it was easy and just take them right. And I had no idea. I would have been so pissed. But that was a huge example of, we don't need to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, looking back on it, that was probably not okay.
No, it wasn't okay. No. So let's go to, oh, wait, I know. Wait, there's one more thing. I'm sorry. I was thinking about. In that whole idea of how women want abundance and men want, you know what I mean? They function as scarcity. Does that cause men to do things that they wouldn't normally do? Or is it just natural? Like, you know, when there's a damsel in distress sort of thing. I mean, you carried a friend through a casino, for God's sakes, but you know what I mean? Is it something we want to do, or is it something that we just do because we think we're supposed to?
I think there's a lot of just doing because we think we're supposed to,
right?
At least from a guy's perspective. Yeah. You know, in my head, if I think about something like giving flowers, like special occasions, obviously, romantic occasions, holidays, all that good stuff. Every once in a while, if you have a random thought about flowers, which is few and far between, then you might stop at, you know, the
Yeah.
grocery store on the way home or
Yeah.
a flower shop or something.
You know, that makes me think that most women have a special magic power of picking up on bullshit. So if you bring flowers because you love her and you thought of her and it was nice, she'll know it. If you're lying, if you picked up, you know, for her birthday on the corner store and brought it in and knows that your heart wasn't really into it, she'll know that it's not authentic. No, so faking it for guys, which is a mixed message because we're going, remember this and I like this and I want this and don't forget, you know what I mean? But don't fake it. It has to be real.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one. It puts men, I think, in a very difficult position.
Especially if you are a practical
Yes.
guy. Like, I get it on the spectrum. Men tend to be a little bit more like thinking practically, like, why do you need flowers? They're just going to sit in the water and die or whatever.
Oh my God.
But if you're on the even more practical side of guys, where it's like, is it okay to set a reminder on your phone? Like,
Yeah.
hey, today is the 12th, and on the 12th, I always get flowers or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that disingenuous because there's a timer, or is that more romantic because it's like he knows he's retarded and he's taking the steps to take care of his partner anyways?
Right. It's a good question, but whatever it is, I want you to know that a woman's spidey senses, you know, grab a hold of that. And honestly, I'm going to tell you, and this might piss people off, but whatever. The damsel in distress is literally, or our sex, using our sex, which is manipulative in a way, a get out of jail free card often. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like for guys, it tends to be a get into jail for free. Like you land on jail, you know, without realizing
State,
it.
do not pass go.
Yeah.
Right. But now I want to take these theories that we're talking about and apply it to dating. So women or men, when you're picking your partner, if you have an unhealthy dependence on that damsel in distress, or a healthy dependence on, I'm going to be your provider, you know, and love bomb you and give you diamonds and cars and all the things, you know what I mean? Because you don't know how to access the other parts of you. It's why we end up in such toxic relationships, right? Because we haven't learned that yet, how to be authentic or how to not lean solely on that.
And I feel like it's even tougher because at the beginning of a relationship,
Uh-huh.
that, you know, it's probably also like, oh, I'm in a new relationship. I'm getting all these gifts. This is fine. Or, oh, you know, like I get to be the provider a lot. And then as the relationship develops, you know, past the honeymoon phase and into like a real, you know, partnership, it's like, oh, if that's all we have, then, you know, it's like it's been an illusion.
Right. It also can, an illusion, like false advertising, you know, because when we're dating, we bring our good representative. You know what I mean? And if, by the way, somebody is not showing up in a great way when they're courting you and trying to win your heart, those red flags should be screaming, because that's when they're on their best behavior.
It's probably not going to get better with time.
No, it does not get better with time. As a matter of fact, we know it gets worse with time. And even in friendships between men and women, you know, if you have, at least in my mind, when you have a male friend who does all this stuff and then resents it later, that seems unfair, right? I mean, like, you know, it seems like if we're not sharing what we want or whatever it is, then we're setting it up to fail.
Yeah, that's a tough one, especially because like with mixed gendered friendships,
Yeah.
there's like, I tend to treat all my friends the same. You know, my friends all call me mom, but that me taking care of the boys is just, you know, he's a good guy. He's looking out for them, making sure they don't get killed.
Yeah.
But if I'm taking care of the girls, I feel like a lot of people looking at me like, oh, he has an agenda.
Yes.
You know?
For sure. Oh my God. Absolutely. Because unfortunately, a lot of guys do. I mean, really, you know what I mean? And so it sends mixed messages, I think. But I do think if we're using, I mean, gender is our one of our superpowers. If we know how to use it with each other and accept each other's and be honest and authentic about it, do you know what I mean? Then I think it can absolutely be a superpower.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing when we were talking about like pumping gas or getting the car door earlier, where it's like, we have strengths, and it's going to benefit everyone if we play into them.
Yes.
You know, ignoring them and trying to force everyone into like the one box where it's, you know, like we are human. It's like, yeah, but there's so much variation.
Yeah.
You know, like it makes no sense to just like, if you have a bunch of players on the team, some are good at offense, some are good at defense. It doesn't make sense to just put them all in a pile and pick at random because they're all equal.
That's right.
Like, use the strengths together.
Yes.
Use the strengths together over here, and everyone's going to benefit from it.
That's right.
You know?
Because then they're accepting that their position is theirs, and we're going to work together to win this game, right? But it's when we start getting pissed at them for not knowing our position. You know, I mean, right? Well, so we're trying to change each other, which leads me to kind of romantic connections. Now, a lot of research points to literally that the quality of your relationships, especially by the time you're 50, literally determines your happiness for life. Literally. So, and romantic connections, true. You know, like, and that speaks volumes. It makes sense, right? But when you have all rough relationships and you grow old and don't make connections, your life satisfaction is going to be less than somebody who has all of those.
Yeah, and I think too that like by the time you're 50, you've experienced a lot of life.
Yeah.
Granted, most people have a lot of life to experience after 50, but the hope, if the first 50 years of your life was spent with toxic relationships, even if you've grown a bunch as a person and you made mistakes earlier and you're a better partner now, and technically at this point in your life, you should be at the best position to get into a good relationship.
Yeah.
Being worn down from all the years before, I think would definitely contribute to that lower life satisfaction.
Absolutely. It does, because we become apathetic and tired, you know what I mean, of getting hurt and all the things. But we'll talk about that when we talk about aging. I wanted to tell you about this Harvard study. Excuse me. It was one of the largest longitudinal studies ever done. It was over the course of 80 years. And JFK actually participated in it. And what they measured was level of happiness and the depth of their relationships in their life. And it absolutely spoke volumes about literally your level of happiness in your relationship is what determines life satisfaction. So Harvard actually did that research. It's amazing.
And I think that it's kind of like a dual relationship with that too, because your life satisfaction outside of your relationship is also going to feed back into it.
Yeah.
You know, like even if you on paper have a great relationship, if you hate your job and you spend 8 hours a day at it, you're not going to come home every day in the best mood.
Right.
Even if you are happy to see your partner, that all that negative emotion and energy is going to start seeping into the cracks.
Oh, it just, you know, the idea of that our relationship is so important. I mean, relationships give us a sense of purpose. It is so important, but yet we spend so little time working on it. And, you know what I mean? We'll spend all this time with work and all this time with our workout and whatever it is. And only when something breaks down do they then often go and get support. And I've said this before, your generation and a little bit older have been amazing from my perspective, because you guys seem to come in before there's a problem or when you first detect a problem, whereas my generation, there's a massive breakdown and things have happened that cannot be undone. I mean, you can't unring that bell. And so, you know, the likelihood of that working is like nil. You know what I mean? Or you're going to end up hating each other and just grow old and give your time away.
Do you see with your clients, do you see the same problems causing people to come in for the relationships?
Yes.
Between, you know, younger generations and older generations? Is it the same things?
Well, that's a great question. I think that with an older generation, people my age or around my age, come in because there's issues about sex, there's issues about money, right? Those are usually the top two. And we can get into that more, but your age seems to come in because we're not on the same page. We're not working like a team. We're not having each other's back. Like, it's more team focused than my generation.
Interesting.
Yeah. But you guys are smarter to come in. You know what? Even if you're going to go to a coach, make sure it's a good coach, and that's what they specialize, or therapist. But it's tragic to me because I hear all the time, oh, Dr. Wise, we'd love to come, but we want to save money for this trip, or da-da-da, which I get. You know, we have to cut back. But if there are issues in the relationship, the trip isn't going to fucking be fun anyway.
The trip isn't going to fix anything.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's tragic. We kind of put it at the bottom of the totem pole. No, I have to work, you know, like all those kinds of things.
And then within, today's episode's kind of been a lot about our, men versus women. When couples do come in, it tends to be about money or about sex. I'm guessing, like we talked about earlier, abundance versus scarcity.
Yes.
With those money issues that come up, is it typically men not wanting to spend as much money on something, or won't buy her something, and she's like, where is, fill in the blank? Totally.
And in terms of sex, because body image is a huge part. She doesn't want to have sex with the lights on. She doesn't want, whatever it is. Or, he's starting to age, and so his erections aren't the same. There's all this body image stuff that does impact sex. You know what I mean? Or desire changes as testosterone goes down. And you know what I mean? And it's not stuff that they're being proactive about.
Mm-hmm. Or even understanding that, like with the testosterone thing, as you get older, maybe your libido goes down or your erections aren't the same. That's not an indicator necessarily of how you feel about your partner. It's
desire,
just a part of aging and understanding that the biological body is different than like what's going on in the mind.
Yeah.
Kind of separating someone from their meat vessel.
Totally, yeah. But most of the time, without the proper work, people take it personal. He must be cheating because he never wants to have sex, or, you know what I mean? Or she's using, or often, which is painful to say, sex as a weapon. Well, I'm not going to have sex with you if I don't feel close, if I don't feel connected. You know what I mean? Or I'm so tired at work, which is an undercurrent of saying you're not making enough because I have to work long hours. I'm too tired for sex.
Using sex as a bargaining chip, would you say that is about split 50-50 between men and women? Or is it more used by one side?
No, it's more used by women, at least overtly. Men and desire and wanting sex can also become manipulative because, then they're trying to do all the things so that they can have sex. You know what I mean? Understandably so. But it needs to be authentic. And that's where people don't see where the work needs to happen. Just because you're buying her a diamond bracelet doesn't mean you have free range to do whatever. You know what I mean? So it's important that we recognize that. Like I said, relationships really do give us a sense of purpose if it's deep and real and we're truly connected. And if we take ourselves off the market because we have that, then we have more time and energy to focus on the things like career and body image or whatever. You know what I mean? So they kind of go together.
And you touched a tiny bit on cheating for a moment.
Yeah,
I feel like
we're going to talk about cheating.
It would be this episode would be missing something if we're talking about men versus women, because that's one of the most popular things that goes out online: why men cheat versus why women cheat.
Yes, yeah, and we're going to talk about that because it's an important one. If we don't really understand the differences, then we can't change it. We can't intervene. So unfortunately, people don't take the time to understand a lot of this stuff. They just want to put men in one, arena. All men are dogs. Oh, men cheat because they're fuckers. You know what I mean? But there's something to it. And if we understand it, then we can make a difference,
It's funny that you say that. That was something that actually I see a lot of, not the cheating thing, but it is way more okay to say men are dogs.
Yeah.
Or men just suck.
Yeah.
What if you say women suck? That face.
Yeah.
Makes that
right.
face,
I'm going down. I'm going to find our notes on cheating because I think this is actually a great segue to it, But what was my face? Did you?
You had a you reacted exactly how everyone reacts.
Yeah.
You know, like if my friends are dating and they can't find a good guy, it's an acceptable thing. Nobody's going to bat an eye. You go, I'm sorry, dude. Men suck.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but if one of the boys was dating and couldn't find a girl, if I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, women suck.
Yeah.
That is like, you're an incel, you're a sexist, misogynist, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like bashing
Yeah.
of the sexes is even skewed heavily.
Oh, it's so, I mean, we're pit against each other. You know what I mean? And in such a negative way that it's hard to come back from that. Do you know? Instead of like what we're doing this whole podcast today on is what to do with it so that it enhances things, not fucks things up all the time. You know, so let's talk about cheating. Okay, and we're gonna use some of the research here. So it's not, and my professional opinion, but, and you know, just the fun shit in between it. But so people always want to know, what does the research say about why the fuck do men cheat? They don't want to know the research. They want to find the flaw. They want to find the, but there, and this could be a lot of reasons. These aren't the only reasons. But often men cheat because they don't feel wanted and desired anymore. Or it's too difficult to keep apologizing and begging and doing all the things and then not feel like your partner is attracted to you. So oftentimes there's a passive-aggressive revenge. Like, oh, it's fine. You're not going to give it to me? I'll
Find
get
it
it
somewhere
someplace
else.
else. For sure. And, you know, but it's a pain. It's not just like a fuck you, because it hurts to feel rejected by the person that you love.
It's like a self-medicating.
Oh, my God. Yes, literally. So it's almost like, you know, forget it, you know. And often men can't regulate self-control like women, right? They don't have all the same mechanisms, which is not giving them permission.
Not an excuse.
Right. But do you see that too? That guys are more impulsive in your group of friends than girls?
Oh, definitely. You know, they're okay if I call them stupid because they know that they're stupid and they'll do things like, why did I do that? You know, the intrusive thoughts just seem to be louder.
Yes.
And harder to ignore.
Oh, for sure. That's for sure. And, you know, the other issue, or why men cheat, is that they can't regulate their self-esteem. And so they find their self-esteem in the conquering of getting a woman in bed. You know, and that often is with more of a narcissistic personality in a man, right? But it's like like a fuckboy. It comes with a badge of honor.
Kind of like we were talking about earlier, tying your personality to one aspect of you instead of, you know, saying that like, I am this is who I am.
Yep.
It's kind of like, I can only feel good about myself if I'm,
That's right.
you know, conquering or
Yeah.
finding other women to sleep with. Like I can only see myself as, you know, like a successful man if he's a player or whatever, you know, adjective you want to describe them as.
Exactly. Another reason why men cheat, and what the research says, is dissatisfaction in their current relationship. And so they are looking elsewhere. You know, I mean, like the relationship has become flat and...
Did the type of dissatisfaction come up? Whether it's sexual, emotional?
No, just overall dissatisfaction in the relationship, you know. The worst part about this, I talk about it in terms of the 70-30 rule. That's the right number, right? 70-30? Yeah. Do you know that rule?
I don't.
So what happens is when you're with somebody long term, you feel like you're getting 70% of what you need. You know, we've built a family, we have a house, we sometimes have great sex, we sometimes don't. For the most part, I'd say 70% is what's usually about normal.
Okay.
You know, because people said, well, if I had a magic wand, da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? But then, say he goes into the office and there's this little secretary or whatever it is, and she lights up like a Christmas tree when you walk in, and she makes you feel wanted, and she, you know what I mean? Like literally makes you feel like the man, you know, like everything you do is fabulous. And you go, oh my God, that's what's missing in my life. That's what's missing in my life. So you leave your 70% and you go to the 30%, and you get there and you're like, fuck, you realize that you only have 30%. Because when you were getting it both from both, you felt 100%.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like taking 70% for granted. If I hope I'm not confusing. Am I confusing?
No,
Okay.
it makes sense. Like you have it's the better half, you know.
Yes, that's
You have
right.
way more, and things really are pretty good.
Yeah.
But that stuff over there, the grass on the other side of the fence, like
Uh-huh. Yeah.
that must be so much. I know it's just 30, but that must be better.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. And then
so-
you have both because you're cheating and you're feeling, or you think you're feeling whole. The problem, research also shows that when a person marries the person they cheated with, the divorce rate is like 90%. It's massive. That's why people are like, well, I'm on number 3, you know what I mean? Because they don't take the time to realize that if I leave 70%, I'm only going to be left with that 30%.
And then the divorce statistic makes a bunch of sense. You know, people always talk about how important the foundation of a relationship is.
Yeah.
If your relationship started with cheating, it's hard to really find a worse way to start something.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, the trust in that, I know how we met kind of thing.
Well, yeah, you know, if they were willing to cheat on their
That's right.
previous partner, like
Right.
odds are, you know.
That's right. And you have kids with that person. I mean, you've built a whole life and you're still willing to fuck it up. You know what I mean? And is it only because what he's needing and wanting is seeking desire? That's so resolvable, unless she actually despises him and doesn't desire him, then that's a different issue that's going on there. You know what I mean? But I think for the most part, and women want to feel desired too, but for a man, especially sexual desire, because he's always having to be the initiator and stuff like that. And it gets tiring.
Well, I'd say it's probably pretty common too. As a general rule, I think men tend to be seen as, for lack of a better word, hornier.
Yeah.
Whether it's because they tend to outwardly express it more.
Yeah.
I think that also lends itself to those kind of opportunities, where it's like, if that is kind of, people feel the feelers you're putting out, and if that energy isn't getting like tampered down at home with your being satisfied in a relationship, it's going to find somewhere to root,
Yeah.
Whereas if it's reversed, if a woman isn't getting what she's wanting at home and there's a, I don't know, hot new intern or something, maybe there's less likely of a chance that those feelings get expressed outward because women aren't as seen as hornier.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's definitely true. Which, I mean, yes, everybody wants to feel adored and worshipped and cherished, no question. But oftentimes, men rely on that more. Women are kind of, because we're more accommodating. Oh, he's tired from work. Oh, all the things. But I'm going to say it also comes down to self-esteem, because if you have poor self-esteem, you're not able to fulfill those things on yourself, by yourself, feeling good about yourself, that you need external validation for who you are, how you look, you know what I mean? That's another reason why guys cheat, or people do in general. But self-esteem, in terms of the research in men, poor self-esteem is one of the reasons why men cheat. So, which brings me to, cheating is a decision. It is. It is a choice. And it is the choice of the cheater that's doing it. And because people who have been cheated on often take on that burden. I wasn't enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't young enough. I didn't make enough money, whatever it is. But it is the cheater's decision. And oftentimes with a shitty partner who says, you made me cheat because you always did it, like as if you don't make me hit you, bitch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like kind of thing. It's like, well, you weren't giving it to me. So, so self-esteem is a huge part of this.
Mm-hmm. And what about the other side? We've talked a little bit about the reasons why men tend to cheat more.
Yep.
All usually applicable to people as a whole.
Yep. Let's talk about why women cheat. Yeah. Okay. So yes, there are a lot of different reasons why women cheat. But for women, the number one reason is they're seeking emotional connection. Women thrive on feeling connected. And when they feel disconnected, which is why women often follow a man around the house when they're fighting, because she's panicked that she's going to lose that connection. But when she's losing that connection, oftentimes she's going to seek it someplace else. So emotional connection is huge for women.
Mm-hmm. And this was a few years ago, so I'm not sure if the data is still relevant, but I was listening to a different podcast with, I think they were a sex researcher or something, but tying into the biological differences, how do you feel about the theory of women cheating because they have a partner that is a good provider, but finding a actual mate whose genes may appear to be better? You know, if you have a guy that's rich and successful and, you know, can provide like all that, but maybe, you know, he's got like a bum leg, or like maybe he's got bad skin or bad teeth, like all the genetically determined factors. What about finding someone like, hey, they look kind of similar, he would never know unless there was a test, but this person appears to have some better genetics?
Yeah, I think so. I mean that could definitely be a reason, especially if, you know, you're in the baby bearing ages, you long for those good genes, you know, like just naturally. But I think with that provider, if he were able to learn how to show appreciation and not neglect, because that's another reason why women cheat. They feel neglected and unappreciated, taken for granted. If he could learn how to do that, then maybe the bum leg or the bad skin or teeth, you know, as a matter of fact, maybe she'd help him fix that if he were open to it, you know?
And then with the more emotional side of female cheating that we're talking about, sex can be emotional, but it feels that cheating in nature tends to be much more of a sexual thing. Is that just like a view that I'm programmed to have because of society? Is it more an emotional thing, or is it really much more just about the sex?
You mean for men or women?
Let's talk about both.
Yeah.
We'll do women first because we're talking about women right now.
Yeah. For women, it really is more of an emotional thing, you know, because it makes them feel like they're a part of something, that they're going to be protected and safe because there is a display of connectedness. And ultimately, women do strive to feel grounded and connected and safe with their partner. So, and great sex, besides being great sex, although we can think of 1,000 other reasons why it's great, but great sex does bond two people emotionally, you know. And yes, men as well like that bond, but let's face it, a lot of men find it easier to have sex and not care, and they'll say things like, well, it's just sex, I didn't have feelings for her. You know what I mean?
It's funny that you said that. I was just thinking about back to, I don't know if it's the same podcast. I've listened to so many at this point. But I think there was like some interviews were done. And basically like the first question that women asked when they were told like their partner told them that they were cheating on them was, do you love her? And the first question that men asked was, did you have sex with him?
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. That makes so much sense. You know, this also brings me to a thought though about common fantasies for couples and things that they bring up. So common fantasy, one of the most common is a threesome. And the thing about that is for him, it's just sex, but it's a fun fantasy to think about. For her, it's a fun fantasy to think about, but she wants to know that she's going to be safe, that he's not going to fall in love with the other girl, you know what I mean, that she's not going to take her position. So sometimes that's the resistance with that. I mean, there's other resistance, but that is a big one. You know? Yeah, I want to talk about the next one, which is sort of a lack of feeling satisfied with your partner because, you know, and this is for women and why they cheat, but if she's not feeling like her needs are met emotionally, or she's not feeling like she's wanted to, but more invisible. Like, you know, he comes home, doesn't make eye contact, he turns on the game, he grabs a beer or whatever it is, or has work to do, and she spent all this time making dinner or doing it, and he never shows appreciation. Like, you sit down, honey, let me do the dishes, this was an amazing meal. That leads to cheating it for women.
Interesting, there's that connection. I don't think most men would ever go back and be like, let me go back and see why that might have happened. You know, I know we talked about how like it's always the cheater's decision.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are two halves of a relationship, and usually if one half isn't getting what they want, it's almost always something the other half can address.
Yeah.
when you do have clients that could be like, my partner cheated on me, do you notice if men have an easier time bouncing back, or if women have easier time bouncing back, or if it's just like
It's a great question.
hard for both?
It's a great question. Well, of course, they all vary, and their willingness to do the work. You know, some couples come in and they say, okay, I caught him cheating. Now we need therapy. They either have both feet in and they're willing to do the work and really get to what is the core, what's the undercurrent of why you cheated, or they have 1 foot in and 1 foot out and it's like, I may stay, I may not, or they have 2 feet out and they're just doing it for the sake of saying, we went to therapy, it didn't do shit. Do you know what I mean? But if a couple comes in and they're willing to really look at the undercurrent, then oftentimes they can get past it. It takes time and work. People think, oh, we did 3 sessions. No. I had one couple that did 2-hour sessions every week for a year to get through it. And they did, you know, but sometimes it's drastic changes that have to occur. Sometimes you have to quit that job or move out of the city, or you have to be willing and committed to do whatever it takes, you know what I mean, to resolve this. Men, I would say, for the most part, have a harder time because there's a sense of ownership, or, you know, that's my property, and another man has been there and did it, you know, even though that sounds very sexist, but that's the vibe. For women, they have to get past the emotional part, you know, which is hard to do. But again, if we're doing work on it, then it just tends to go easier.
Well, I think there is probably some biological basis for those, you know.
Yes.
A woman's always going to know their kid is theirs just by nature of how human pregnancy works.
Yeah.
You know, as a guy, you can be pretty sure, unless it looks very different than you when it comes out.
Yeah.
I think that's why there might be a little bit more hesitation from men, because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, if you guys are planning to have a kid, especially like if the girl's already pregnant and you found out like, oh, it's come back like 4 months ago. Oh my God, that's when it happened. Now you're just like, oh, what happens?
Yeah.
What if we put in all this work and get back to normal, you know, air quotes, but then you find out the baby isn't yours.
Ooh. I did have a situation like that.
Yeah.
But it was 3 ways. She had a husband, a boyfriend, and her boss.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So there was a lot going on there. So really, and I can say that emotions are fluid. Our emotions change. They could change by hour, minute to minute. But that feeling like somebody has been there is harder to get past. You know what I mean?
And it also makes sense for the women's side of things where, you know, if she's pregnant and he cheats or something, is he no longer going to be committed? Am I going to have to raise and deal with this baby all on my own? Is the provider gone? Am I, you know, don't have someone to take shifts at night when the baby wakes up? Like all the crazy amounts of effort that go into raising a human baby. Is that partnership jeopardized because he's starting to put feelers out elsewhere?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think, again, I want everybody to know that it is a choice to cheat, and we can't stop somebody from cheating, but there are ways to have less cheating, or, you know what I mean, not cheat. Yes, there are ways to, but number one is communication. You know, people don't, this always blows me away, people don't communicate because it's uncomfortable. But finding out that your partner cheated is more uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And we aren't always taught how to communicate. Do you know? And
I mean, most people are not taught how to communicate.
No, which actually we'll do one of our episodes on, right? Because it tends to be very difficult for people to communicate, I say, from a place of love and a place of, I'm standing in our we, and will what we're going to talk about move us forward? Or am I standing in my I, and what I'm going to say is going to fuck you up and punish you? Because people say, I did try and tell him what an asshole he was. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, communication is definitely key. That's one way. And an agreement about an openness. Like, we agree that if we ever get to that place, even though I might be hurt or you might be hurt that we're in that place, we have an agreement that we're going to sit down before either one of us makes that decision. You know?
And I think the last thing we should probably talk about, cheating is probably one of the leading causes of divorce, I'd imagine, right next to financial issues.
Yeah.
What about sex differences within divorce?
Oh, huge.
Do men typically initiate it? Do women typically initiate it? Does it depend on who cheated in the instance?
Yeah, right. Yeah, people always want to know that. So women initiate divorce more often. At least that's what the research says. And from what I've seen as well. And in terms of cheating, actually, both cheat. Women are just better at hiding it because men often think with their dicks. You know what I mean? They get lazy or they get complacent. And women are more thoughtful about it. I don't mean thoughtful. I mean provoking thoughts. But ultimately, if there is this sort of a scenario, a woman is going to file first.
And then are the reasons within divorce, let's say it's not cheating or it's not strictly financial, when there are divorces, do the reasons tend to be similar? Is it just my needs aren't being met, or is it like men tend to want to open relationships and women don't, or she wants to go travel, or there's just one party noticed they're just emotionally not compatible anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question, by the way. So as this is an interesting conundrum, like the psychology behind this is so cool. I mean, as we start to get older, we have this awful awakening that says, okay, life isn't really going to be everything I ever dreamed of for the most part. When you're young, you think, I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to travel all over the world, and I'm going to be famous, whatever you think when you're younger. Then you start to get older and you've been working your ass off for a house, a mortgage that's expensive, all kinds of things. And your body starts to change, and you either learn how to embrace it and change it so that you can go do some things in your life, your bucket list things, or we become angry and resentful that life did not turn out. This never was what I expected life to be. And for the most people, that's what happens. Life doesn't, you never think this turn is going to happen. And then bam, you take the turn. And we are starving to figure out a solution to it. Then this 50-year-old man finds this 24-year-old woman, makes him look young, makes him look cool, makes him look successful, and he says, I want that. Because that's going, or the Corvette, or whatever it is, that makes me feel like I'm not losing it.
I was about to ask if there's a pressure difference because, men can become a father at any point in life after puberty, and they don't have that biological clock the same way that women have to deal with, where, you have granted, compared to the entire lifespan, it's a pretty small window for healthy pregnancy to happen.
Yeah.
So would you say that during these divorces and whatnot, I feel like I would imagine men tend to be worried less, like I could start a family later, compared to if a woman gets divorced and she's, 35, it's like, I wanted kids. He said he'd think about it, and now we're getting divorced because he doesn't want them. And it's like, I'm already 35. Like, I got to get on top of this right now.
Oh, yeah. And that's a real concern, understandably so. There's anger because it's like, he burned the best years of my life, my baby, bearing age and all that stuff. There is a different pressure. And so for women, instead of needing to feel that again, they're searching for safety and security, and will he help me fulfill on my need for abundance of kids, abundance of, all of the things I ever dreamt of. And if he's not paying attention to, then I'm not getting to fulfill that for myself. I'm going to go find somebody who will fulfill it for me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that those are some huge, huge reasons when it's not just about, not just about sex. It's about our psyche and how it does fuck with our brain. Aging and expectations of life and what's supposed to happen that wasn't supposed to happen. I never thought I'd get divorced. I never thought I would, all the things, Or, in some cases, a woman who has children who hate her and feel like that wasn't what was supposed to happen. I was supposed to be loved and adored and appreciated and, help raise my grandchildren and all the things. So there is a lot of mental mind fuck with it.
We are different down to the smallest level.
We are. I mean, and it's not, and again, this isn't a sweeping statement, but it is for the most part what research indicates. So another one about cheating and how to stop your partner from cheating is to absolutely show appreciation. I tell this to my clients all the time. And you guys, even at home, right? 3 compliments for every 1 put down, right? Did you not hear that your whole life?
The whole time.
But do you understand why now that you're a grown man?
Yeah.
Right?
And it's even weirder now, too, because even though there's that 3 to 1, that 1 down really has so much more weight. It really should be 10 to 1.
Yes. I mean, I think John Gottman does 5 to 1. And I lowered the bar to 3 to 1 because people would say things like, it's impossible to give 5 compliments for every 1 complaint. You know what I mean? But it would be a fabulous thing. But so we want to show appreciation. 3 positives for every 1 negative. And we need to pay attention to our boundaries. Because if my expectation is that my partner is going to take me to dinner and romance me because it's our date night and I got all dressed up and shaved my legs and have perfume and planning to put on a cute teddy later when we get home, and he's on his phone at dinner,
it's going to be hell to pay.
You're wah, wah, wah. My battery is running out. You know what I mean? And so that does not show the appreciation that's necessary. And as a matter of fact, leads to contempt. And he's like, what? I have to work. I had to just make this call. She got all pissed off because you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that.
It's that same thing where it's there are, even if it is I need to make a work call.
Yeah.
I'm expected to be the provider. I'm providing, but it's the same thing we've been talking about the whole time. There's a mixed message. You have to play to the strengths while acknowledging that the context is important and which side of the partnership you're on. There's a bunch of variables to take
for sure
account.
And that brings us to our last one, and then we'll close. The idea of being willing to do whatever it takes, and I said this earlier, and this is again to stop your partner from cheating. If you are in an environment that's not going to support the great relationship, then you change it. If she's so hurt that you need to go out with that group of friends every Thursday night, and one of the women in that group is causing her angst, and I'm not saying in a controlling way, I'm saying you have to be willing to accommodate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's going to wrap it up for men versus women.
That's right. Thank you. For more information or to submit a question, go to our website, lifesauce.com. That's life-sauce.com. And be sure to follow us on social media. I'm Dr. Christy Wise. Thanks for joining us.